housekeeping stuff before we go into the introduction, if you don't mind?
Sure. I just want to make sure we're all set on YouTube. Just give it one
Yep.
sec.
Housekeeping stuff before we go.
All right, Councilor Johnson, you're all set.
Who was that? Yeah, let me just take care of some housekeeping stuff. That way you can do the intro and we can have a discussion.
Sure.
So welcome to the October 5th, 2020 Town Council Communication Committee meeting. And I call this meeting to order. Item number 2 is a roll call. How do we do that with 2 members?
Well, we'll take the roll. Councilor
Okey-dokey.
Johnson,
I'm here.
Councilor Gleistein,
Here.
and Councilor Clucci is absent.
Yes. Item number 3, a move to approve June 28th and August 3rd, 2020 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Okay.
I second. Did I hear a motion to approve?
Yes, so moved.
So move. I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, or I guess I actually have to call, I'm sorry, Councilor Gleistein,
Yes.
Councilor Johnson.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, but to Ken's point, there was, item number 3 on one set of the minutes was we tabled them because they were not in the packet. So I guess we kind of have a lot. Yeah, I guess that's a running thing. So yeah.
Right.
I think that we have some things we'll work through administratively with getting this committee's meeting minutes in order, and we'll certainly put that on the top of the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. And having done that, Liam, I pass it over to you to introduce.
Yeah, so I'm pleased to, I guess, announce and introduce Allison Carrier as the town's first communications and community engagement coordinator. I distributed a bio to the full council before the weekend. Allison comes to us, previously worked for Wolf's Neck Center in Freeport, Maine, as in a variety of roles, primarily dealing with communications and marketing and outreach and engagement. So certainly well qualified. I think she's going to provide a much needed resource and some expertise that we've previously been trying to cobble together through a variety of sources. So very, very pleased to have her join the team.
Welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Definitely welcome. I'm sure people will be interested to meet you out and about in the community or through virtual. So I think that's, I think people are going to be very interested to see how we can evolve the communications in town.
Definitely.
And
The expectations are so much higher now than they've ever been in the history of town government. And, then it's what people want. So I feel we should provide it, even though you could probably push back and say, no, people really want it. So.
And actually, the Town Council Communication Committee, we're more involved in communicating the town council business. I think we know what we want to do. We don't necessarily know how to do it. So we're going to really, not to put pressure on you, but really hopefully that you can help us with that, with your experience, because it definitely looks like you have that experience to help us out with that. And on a side note, I've lived here for 35 years. I've never been to Wolf Neck Center.
Oh my gosh.
Until this weekend. I went up this weekend.
Pumpkin hair rides.
I went up to check out the camping.
Oh, good.
Because I wanted to do one last fall camp trip. So we went up, my wife and I, and we walked through. It's very impressive, over 600 acres.
We're 600 acres. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that you made it up, and what funny timing too.
Yeah, really nice. Lots of dogs. I said, yeah, my dog would have a good time up here.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to it.
Oh, good. Well, Paul stopped in this afternoon, so I was able to meet your son, but he made a good point about how the town council is very eager, the people who are on right now are eager to get communications out, and that hopefully that's the case moving forward. I know that there's some changeover that happens, but if we can have some established systems in place that make it so that it carries on.
Right.
good time.
And for future reference, that gentleman is the chair of the council, not related to me. You've never worked for a municipal government, right?
I'm learning day one.
That's right.
And I would just say that, you know, one of the first things Ken and I asked about when we came on was, you know, a lot of answers we got why we can't do this, why we can't do that was money. And so, you know, and that may continue to be the answer. But you know, if money, you know, if it's a priority, it's going to get funded. So I'm not saying everything gets funded. It may not make it through the budget process, but you know, the budget process, you know, the sooner that you think of things and start getting it to the communications committee and even to the finance committee, because you know, we really start the budget process in the spring of the new year. And by the time you get new people elected and set the committees up, you know, what I learned as a first year counselor, and maybe Counselor Johnson did as well, you know, the time just, you know, it just, it evaporates. And so if you start having ideas, start thinking about finding out what it costs, because both Counselor Johnson and I were like, well, that can't be a reason. I mean, you know, that we don't do anything. It at least needs to get out there. We say we don't prioritize it. No, the council's not going to fund that this year. It's, you know, it's not going to happen. So, but, you know, if we're not asking or putting it forward, then we definitely won't get it. It'll never be there. So
good point.
Just a little thought forward, because by the time we get the new people on, you know, we probably won't even be meeting till December or January. And then, you know, at that point, I mean, budget season comes up right after that. I mean, it's just, it's, you know, it comes up every year.
Yeah, good point. And you know, again, I know this is your first day, so definitely don't want to overwhelm you. But a couple things to keep in mind is, right, this is a council level committee. We're in the middle of an election. We have 3 seats up. So it's very possible that the one member that's not with us today, I shouldn't say very possible, it's feasible that he may not be with us because there are 3 seats up. Not only that, after the election settles down, then the chair and the leadership shift around the committees based on the input from existing members and new members. And some folks may not want to stay on a committee they're on. They may want to move on. So, I mean, we're right now, this next couple months, it's a time to change for the committee. So, and like Betsy said, this year just blew by. We had high hopes to do a few things, and life got in a little bit in the way with COVID. And then, you know, we lost Larissa. And so I'm looking forward to the coming year, because I'm definitely going to stay on the committee. I don't know if I'll chair the committee, but I'll definitely want to stay on the committee because I understand the value of communication. So having said that, let's move on to item 4, and we may take a sidetrack. Allison, if you don't mind, I may ask you a question or two as we go through these. Item 4 is the discussion and action plan on a focus group coordinated with a new staff role. Now, this was put on before we knew what that role was, or definitely you. So as a general question, have you ever been involved in a focus group before?
No.
Okay. See, we had Eric Conrad from the Maine Municipal Association come down and give us a talk, and he also was the chief editor of the Portland Press for about 25 years. The guy knows communication, and he suggested doing a focus group to have folks come in, tell us what they want to know, when they want to know it, where do they want to consume it from, and then possibly give us some feedback on the new website. So that's
right. And I think we had talked about the website in particular even before Eric came. So Larissa was supposed to get a testing group. I had sent her some names. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from residents that they're not finding things on the website. And I think those things can be fixed. We've had it out there a while, and the idea was to kind of come back around, like the calendars at the bottom. I think the calendar is the most important thing. And we're all constantly telling people, well, scroll through the calendar and click it to see the
Mhm.
meetings, you know. You know, COVID really impacted all that because that was going to occur before the website went live. And, you know, some counselors were going to do, so we actually just ended up having a couple of counselors clicking on a couple of things.
Right.
Mhm.
I provided some feedback since that they've made a few changes on, but I think, you know, what we wanted to do was have a you know, not just say, well, come in and do whatever you want, but have a list of tasks that we would say to a resident, you know, so, and a counselor, you know, if you would like to volunteer for a committee, what would you do? If you would like to be on the new ad hoc charter committee, what would you do? Because I don't know, I can't find it, you know. So, so we wanted to have a list of tasks, and you know, have folks try things on the website, and you know, mostly about finding information, because that's what a resident wants. They want to be able to come on and find information. And we had a very powerful search tool ahead of time. And so when I talked to the IT director, he said, well, it's sensitive. So we've tried to kind of, you know, change it, you know, in certain directions. But there's definitely some things missing. And I think this meeting format has not been very good for, you know, I think we need like a workshop, you know, where people are just on there hitting away, and, you know, we're saying, hey, what about this? You know, we have someone coordinating it. We have the IT and maybe the other person there, but we really ought to schedule that and get it done, because it was supposed to happen before the rollout. And now, you know, since then we decided to go ahead and roll it out because of all the COVID issues, and then, you know, make tweaks from there. Well, we've been up several months now, and I think, you know, it's definitely time for the tweaks. So I'm hoping, and I know we talked about this last time, Liam, as well.
Yeah.
Was
So
You were brand new.
Was
You
there
were brand new
discussion of
then.
a survey?
yeah.
Was there discussion of a survey at all? I know you said focus group, but anything that's more.
Yeah, that's actually the next item.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, good question. Oh, that's the next item, and maybe one can replace both. I'm not sure.
Right.
So
I guess mine is just a little different, because I really think we ought to focus on the website and to tweak it and get it better. And then I think we could probably wrap in some of the elements that Eric was talking about, where, what, when, and survey or something like that. We do have some money for, but it's kind of too much money for some stuff and not enough money for other things. But anyway, we could talk about that. But I'd really like to get a date scheduled and get some volunteers in, you know, that would be able to kind of, you know, hit on the website so we can make some changes and improve it.
So just to interject. So the focus group interest was really centered around the website specifically.
Yes.
Like Gleistein. Okay. So I would see that as being a joint venture between, you know, again, I think certainly, you know, communications in the executive department, but also IT to kind of coordinate that website, get that feedback, and see if we can't make some changes that make it more intuitive or user friendly. And so I think, yeah.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but and maybe this is a distinction without a difference, but the initial thing was not a focus group. It was really to make the website exactly what you're saying, more user friendly. We can call them whatever they want, but we literally wanted people to come. We really, literally, Larissa was going to develop a list of tasks, you know, and we were, you know, and email it to us, and we might tweak it, and you might tweak it, and whoever, IT director, but a list of tasks where people would come in and try to do certain things. And then, you know, we would, you know, we'd go from there. So the focus group idea in terms of communication overall came a little bit later with Eric, but the original one was more like a testing group, I guess I should say.
correct. Yeah, and it was supposed to be before the rollout. So.
And I'm sorry, Liam, I cut you off. I apologize for that.
No, I just want, I don't think it is a difference without distinction. I mean, I think that we can sort of broadly characterize this as, you know, what the engagement and interaction is with our public, you know, whether that's outward communication or whether that's people, you know, seeking information out. I think that it's sort of a two-way street. And so I think, you know, I do apologize that this is a venture that's sort of been delayed, you know, perpetually delayed or gone off the rails a little bit. But I certainly feel like now at this point, we certainly have, you know, we have a webmaster who's extremely capable. We have Allison on board. I think that these are sort of ventures that we can really turn some attention to and try to get some organization and a plan in place. So
I almost think it's better now too that the website is, I mean, maybe not from your perspective, but now that the website's rolled out, people have had a chance to go on there. And so it offers more of a perspective too.
mhm.
Right. And, and I'm not one to give excuses, but I will say there are really good reasons this year why that happened. So for what it's worth, you apologize, Liam, but, you were new, Larissa, was transitioning out. We were in the middle of COVID. We sent all the employees home to work. IT was swamped, so.
But now's the time, right? Now's the time
Yeah.
to put this back on the radar and start making some headway on it. So what I might suggest, and again, I understand to Councilor Johnson's point that there's going to be some more shuffling perhaps on the staffing of this committee.
Right.
But I certainly think that it wouldn't be inappropriate to have this be something that there's a newly formed or a new makeup of the committee next time you convene or not, that we really have these two items identified as with a staff perhaps bring a plan to whether that's again a focus group, whether that's a survey, whether that's a combination of both. And again, I think that the way we collect information and data and feedback, again, maybe the format is a survey or maybe it's a focus group for both. I do think they're different questions though, right? And so we haven't got, I don't want to jump around too much, but obviously the next one is really, I think the survey that Eric Conrad spoke about was really about that outward communication. How are people being informed? Is that social media? Is that the leader? Is that the website? Is that what, right? So understanding that to some degree as well.
Okay.
Right. And I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it just to ground Allison about where we were before we got derailed was, it was going to be a joint effort with the, with the administration and our committee. It was definitely because we all benefit from it and we volunteered to help it. So yeah, we'd like to fire that back up. And again, I don't mean there's no rush, but it's something that we need to address. And I'm saying that because I know you just started, so and I'm sure you're getting hit from all ends. So
I would just like to say, I guess I don't want to make it too broad. We actually had a plan. We had a plan to do something called the Be Informed campaign. We had a postcard, the way we were going to do it with the survey. It was attached. We had a pretty extensive plan in place. Mm-hmm. It just got sidetracked because of staff changes and COVID. So I think I want to make sure that we don't lose this testing, because I'm personally getting a lot of complaints from residents about the website. And, I think that, if we broaden this, to the next meeting, I'd love to just see an action plan the way we had kind of envisioned it, with a list of tasks. And, even if people can't do it all at once, we could even have some residents, who we have the list of tasks and they say, well, I never could find it, and then we get people back together. Like, we don't even have to have them at one time. Say, okay, here's the things we want you to do, and then give us additional feedback. What else might you have wanted to look for and that you could find? And, what did you think of the ease of, and so we get some feedback on the website, and then we could maybe get that group together. But I would rather see sooner rather than later. That it seems like, now is a good time to try to get that going. And then broaden the focus to the larger communication story and picture, I think, which is somewhat, I don't want to say there's two messages, but there is, as Councilor Johnson has pointed out, there is a town piece. And a lot of things that you guys as the town, I don't want to say you guys because we're all one, have to get out at, but then there is also a council piece. So, and part of that is the website, in terms of it being a tool that we can all utilize, so there might be an easy way to find Counselor Corner on the website. Now I would have to try to go and, click under maybe an archive newsletter, if I even knew it was in the newsletter, and download it and look at it. I don't know. I'm just using that as an example, but I think we really should focus on getting the website better. And I think that's a defined task that we could do something on. And if we did need to spend a little money on it, we do have some money that would be something the communications committee could consider. I don't know, but so I'd really like to see that task defined and get going the way we had laid it out under Larissa. I thought it was a good plan.
Okay, well, why don't we pick that up then? Alice and I will review what was put together to date.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what she left behind, but I can send a few like things that we kind of discussed in terms of how we would structure it and, get people involved in doing kind of the testing.
Right. And Allison, just, because again, I think Betsy and I both struggle with the term when we talk about council versus the town, because we are one group. But I think a good example of that is when you get a moment, go to the website, go to the e-newsletter, and just look at the latest posting in the archive. I think it's July 15th.
Yeah. I
Okay.
remember seeing
It's
that.
a great array of good information coming from the administration out to the public. And then there's the section that says Counselor Corner. And in that is a discussion, a pretty detailed discussion of the budget that is really focused on council work. And you'll see, I think, a good example of the separation.
Okay.
Not saying that we won't collaborate, because sooner or later, certain things that may start from the administration come into the council, or vice versa, it gets administered out of the council. So, but it's a good gamble. Okay, so then we feel comfortable with that on the, what's the time frame on that, do you think, Liam? I know.
Well, so our next meeting, are we going to meet? I mean,
Well,
so
I
I
was
mean,
gonna
I
have
hate
that
to see this all
discussion.
because we say next meeting and that's going to be after, if we don't do anything different, it's going to be after the election. But I think we could start getting feedback from residents on the website. We don't, that even doesn't have to be through us. I think,
Right.
that's something we could enlist people and start doing. So, if we wanted to maybe meet maybe in a couple of weeks with just that one thing on the agenda of, what that project plan would look like, how to roll that out. I mean, that would be, obviously we're asking staff to do stuff. So you guys would have to decide if you think that's something that could happen. But like I'm saying, I think, might even be like, we give residents say, hey, can you try all this on the website? And would you be willing to give us feedback to what you found, what you didn't find, things like that. And, that maybe we don't end up being able to convene the group until after the election or something, but we would at least start getting some feedback on the website from residents. Because I've got people asking me, well, should I like send email about what I've tried? And I'm like, let's make it a little more formal than that.
Well, right. I mean, part of that is we have to select the people that are going to be involved in this exercise.
And
right?
making sure it's across demographics too.
Right. Yep.
People are using it for different reasons. I also don't think it should be limited to go see this and see how you get to there, but just generic questions like, why do you use the website? Where do you go to first? Do you use the search bar? Do you use the navigation buttons? And just more questions about their use of it, and not as much about go try to find this. And
Yep.
I'd be curious, I've seen that there's multiple avenues to get to certain pages or certain types of information. So I'd be curious to know how they get from point A to point B, because people might be doing it different ways and one's more common than the other.
So Betsy, what do you think of using next month's meeting just to solidify this? Right? I mean, getting.
Well, I think that's like right at election time. I don't know if we could come back together with just this one agenda item and have some work done on it, that we could all bring up and, agree to, okay, here's kind of, here's how we'll get it started at least. And I think even if you don't have you're not really asking for a committee. I mean, I think even if you don't have cross demographics, you could get started with some people, I had a young new person in town that was really interested in doing it. I'd have to see if I can find the information again. I know some older people who might be interested in doing it. I mean, so right now would probably be the people that we would reach out to, but it's a start. I mean, because if we're struggling, I know I struggle with it. And then I'm hearing from other people who are struggling with it. So, it'd be good to find out what they like too. What's good for you? What do you like? What's not working for you? So, you know, the idea of some general questions are great too, but most people go on to find information. So this I know is kind of have a list of tasks, you know, that they would all. I like the questions you were asking as well. But that might lead more to a discussion, a Zoom meeting where people are trying stuff right on the spot. So, you know, that we could solidify, you know, in an action plan. But I don't know, Ken, would you be willing to try to do something in maybe a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open. Again, I'm just trying to be sensitive to Allison. That's all. I know, you know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Yeah, no, definitely.
I guess
Totally agree with that.
I don't want to I agree. I don't want to overcommit Allison, but why don't we, but I do think it makes some sense to, because this was really a discussion and initiative out of this committee and these committee members, I think that if nothing else, it does make some sense to reconvene and try to then launch some of these initiatives prior to the election and the committee makeup potentially changing. And so what I would envision is let us kind of understand kind of where we were at and be prepared to come back and have a specific conversation on maybe these two agenda items, the survey and a focus group, you know, the website and communications, and have a more educated conversation from our standpoint, and then potentially launch some of those initiatives, you know, to compile data, get some input, get some feedback, and then really make that sort of the subject of a conversation with the new committee post-election, if that makes some sense.
Yeah. What do you think? So the time frame then to get together, like you said, give you some times that everybody get acclimated about what was what, and some new ideas based on this discussion. Do what? Because we meet on November 1st, Betsy. We could have that as a kind of a workshop. We could isolate it to the two top agenda items on this one.
Yeah, it just sounds like we're not going to get any feedback. I mean, that'll be pretty much a year since you and I really were pounding this from the very beginning of getting on the committee and not making progress. And then prior to that, it was 2 years where they had been promising to do the website. I think it was part of our prompting finally that said, yeah, we do have to make it a priority. It didn't even have a project manager. So it's been 3 years, you know, in the frustration level. And then, you know, then people are not satisfied, you know, at least a lot of people who talk to me are frustrated that now, as much as they didn't like the old website, they could find things. Now they can't even find things. And I just wonder if the committee structure is, you know, so to me, the town rolled this out. You know, we had some concerns, you know, quite frankly, Ken and I, because we're both IT project managers, about the rollout and the level of testing and things like that. And so, you know, because in a perfect world, you do a lot more testing and all that, but, you know, everybody wanted to get something going. So, you know, now I think because we were focused on it, it's kind of gotten wrapped up in the committee structure and almost nothing has happened. I mean, I almost wonder, like, if we were just kind of checking in and saying, you know, what have you guys gotten done on getting the website better? You know, I'm not quite saying this correctly, but, you know, it wasn't we were expressing as elected officials, you know, the community frustration with the website. And I do feel, though, that's the town responsibility to, you know, make the website better. So, and, you know, we are part of the town, you know, we're representing it. So again, it's that line, but, you know, you know, maybe we can do a little by email and at least start getting some structure around what we would do for having people give us feedback on the website. I want to keep the task really narrow, not survey, not wider communications. We have a tool. Let's get the tool better than what we have today.
Right. That's right. Well, that's why they're separate items, and we'll definitely do the website through quasi focus group, whatever form that takes. I still say we do that on 11/1. I understand the slowness of it, but also very mindful we have a brand new resource and we have to be realistic. So
Right, yeah. So what did you think about my idea of like starting to do a little of the discussion online, by email in terms of structuring the project a little bit?
Yep, we could do it that way. And again, Allison's never been in municipal government, so again, just a little background. By law, there's two of us here, two counselors. We can get together and have a discussion. But the committee has 3 members. We cannot get together and have a discussion. Every time we have any kind of discussion, even if it's about a ham sandwich, it must be in front of the public. And this, if it's not live, it's going to be Zoom and so. But yes, email, I think we can go back and forth, send some suggestions, maybe get some names, have a discussion on 11/1 with truly walking out of that meeting.
Yeah, I think,
implement it.
yes.
Okay.
So again, why don't we hold open? I mean, I do like Betsy's suggestion. I do think that Councilor Gleistein's suggestion. I do think that there may be an opportunity to have a discussion for us to bring people up to speed and share out some materials with where we were at to pick up this initiative. Maybe have a workshop discussion, and then maybe the meeting on November 1 turns into more of sort of authorizing action, or launching an initiative. And I think that, again, and I accept responsibility for this. I think this is also a conversation that our webmaster should be a part of as it pertains to the website specifically. And so I think that I would like to find some time for the 3 of us to sit down, understand where we've been, where we thought we were going, and then have an educated conversation with these committee members about where that initiative stands. And so I think it may still lend itself to a meeting prior to the 1st. But I would expect that by the 1st, we would have some really concrete action items to move forward with, to then reconvene following the election with the new composition of the committee, to sort of sort through that data and feedback and make those changes.
Okay. That sound good? Councilor Gleisting?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, absolutely.
Where are you? I'm looking out through your window. I can't tell where you are.
Yeah, I unfortunately, a series of events changed, and I've had to do this from my car. So I'm not driving. My daughter is driving. So we're almost home. We're almost back. So it won't be. It just happened to be that.
Okay, I actually thought you were driving.
Exact timing was messed up. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that, Liam. So item number 2. Similar, different topic, survey. Now, this is what was discussed with the survey. I'm kind of, bringing things some back up because we have been distracted. I think the overall goal and the sentiment of the council is to be able to have some type of survey tool that we can use at any given time, something reusable. Something fairly simple, maybe sometimes it's very topic related, to be able to go out and get a pulse of the community. Okay, now there's a lot of mechanics to that. How do you engage the people in the survey and whatnot? How do you design the survey? So it was really, I just brought this up as a discussion point to revitalize the survey question. Eric Conrad said, it should be, his suggestions were there should be 10 questions maximum, with about 4, with outside 4 questions of some metadata of the respondent. Are you a Scarborough citizen? How long have you lived here? Maybe what part of town? Blah, blah, blah. Just metadata, nothing personal. So we always can at least do some good analysis of the results. So when I put this as an action item just for discussion, I didn't have any survey in mind. We currently do not have a survey tool.
Okay.
So I was actually thinking of just discussing the tools. Now I've done research, and typically there's SurveyMonkey.
Yep.
And a few others. Matter of fact, I think our community services group uses a separate tool that, and the name escapes me right now, But in my research, I did find several sites that do a side-by-side compare.
Mhm.
And SurveyMonkey wins hands down for every feature. That's what I use. So, I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
participant on a lot of surveys, and I use SurveyMonkey in corporations. So I thought we could just have a discussion about, and SurveyMonkey is cheap, right? Basic is free, and you can even upgrade for, $30 a month or something, which is well within our budget. So again, I thought maybe we could discuss choosing a tool, or feeling comfortable or a consensus on a tool, because that, the survey could benefit all of us, both the administrative side and the council side, hopefully together though, and just open up that discussion.
I've actively used SurveyMonkey and found that it has a lot of those features that you're mentioning of why it would be used most often, like that you can make questions conditional, like that if it doesn't apply to someone, it skips
Yep.
those questions. And like you said, as a user, that's something that's recognizable for people. I also saw that, I can't remember when it was, when the town was it the town that put out the community center survey? I believe that was through a Google form.
And we do
Yes.
Google Forms a lot internally.
Okay.
Well, that's sort of the internal tool that we use. Functionality wise, though, I certainly couldn't speak to how that compares with SurveyMonkey. And Councilor Johnson, you're correct. I know that Community Services uses a different a different platform for some of their surveying of participants. So that's the point of this discussion, Councilor Johnson, is you just want to talk about what options there are for various platforms in terms of having a survey solution at the ready.
Correct.
I also see that I can see that there's a huge opportunity to use surveys more often. Like even now we're talking about what the town and residents want for communications, but we don't necessarily have a formal feedback or what we're referring to. It's more anecdotal. So I can see that that would be so helpful to just kind of like have okay, most people are absorbing information from the website or from Facebook, something like that. So
Yep.
just from a communications perspective alone, I can see why there's a need for it. And I can imagine that across departments, if you asked, that they would think of other reasons to use a survey platform at some point.
So
I think over time, it's got to be like a whole ethos though, because, we don't have, in my mind, we don't have even a good tool to reach out to tell people to do a survey. But if it becomes a community ethos, to say, hey, guess what? Scarborough surveys a lot of micro topics, and this is where I can always go and find, hey, I'm going to participate in this survey. It's going to be, the newsletter is going to tell me we only have about, I wouldn't say 8 only, but we have 1,800 subscribers to the newsletter. And then of course, this conversation always goes about, what about people who don't use the computer? So, and that's something, but, I would say, like, if this is something we're going to do over the long term, again, iterative changes are probably always a good idea. But, you mentioned that community center one. That, to me, that one really kind of cracked me up, because that was almost seemed like somebody who had not used SurveyMonkey yet, and they went in and go, oh, I can ask the question in this way. Now I can ask it in this way. Now I can use this tool. Like, if there's so many different things, and you could different ways you can ask in SurveyMonkey. So, like, I think, like, if it was going to be a tool, not only do we want to pick a tool, but we kind of want to pick, like Councilor Johnson just said, all right, our standard is we're always going to ask these 4 questions. So some level of standardization across it, I think, so that the tool and the surveys become more user friendly, and people know what to expect. And I think we have that challenge across, departments, because, departments want to get their own information. They don't want to like get tied up, by like bureaucracy and just jump out there and get a survey. But, I think, to Councilor Johnson's point, if we do put a little more structure around it at some point and go forward, maybe we start without structure and then we add structure over time, that, it could become a really useful tool for departments and for the council and for residents, knowing how to do them and knowing
Right, right. Now to Councilor Gleistein's point, Liam, did you get an update on our e-news subscription count?
I believe we're at 1850 even last time I checked.
Well, just a little fun tidbit for Allison. The town council charged this committee to double the subscription this year, the year 2020, from 1,600 to 3,200. And you just heard the count. So I think we're a little behind the 8 ball. But that, again, this is just for your benefit, kind of what Councilor Gleisteen was saying before. We were kind of on a roll. We had created what we thought was a good Be Informed campaign. We were actually designing materials. We're going to coordinate it with the launching of the website, maybe do a mailing, put ads in the paper, and then the world changed. So we have to get back to that somehow.
More important than ever.
Because I think the vision was, at least in our discussion, was if we could get a good percentage of folks subscribing to the e-news, that would be a great medium to solicit input to a survey. Plus, we have 2 electronic bulletin boards in town. We have one owned by the town, one by Sedco, that I'm sure Sedco on occasion would allow us to put up something of interest or importance. And we do have the leader. So you're right. I mean, Councilor Gleisteen is correct. We're pretty thin on the solicitation for the survey. I still feel that we can move forward in choosing a tool and maybe vetting it out and possibly even doing a couple POCs, some samples with some people that would want to be involved with it. I just don't know the mechanics of doing it. Would you know from a government process perspective, Liam, how you would do that? I mean, if this committee says, yeah, let's go out and choose a tool, I don't think we could do it as a committee, right? We'd have to bring this in front of the full council.
We're talking, again, forgive me.
The
we're
procedurals.
Yeah, I think that so if this is a how do we grow the distribution list? How do we increase the outreach?
Well, the topic is the survey tool.
Right.
But the survey tools doesn't have value if you can't grow that outreach to get people to participate in the survey. So, I mean, they're related, but they're separate.
Yeah. I mean, I think that really needs to be kind of where these conversations at this committee level go. I mean, they're all interconnected. I think that the building the engagement through communication. I think those things are all interwoven. I mean, I don't think in terms of a procurement question around, if we identify a survey tool, if that's sort of what we're talking about right now, I don't think that there's any prohibition. It's not. I think if there's funding for communication initiatives or platforms, I don't think that that's something that requires council approval. I can't imagine the cost for that solution would be all that great.
Betsy, what are your thoughts on that? On the survey? I know it's a separate.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in part, it's got to be kind of a combination between staff and some input from probably this committee is a good one to provide input, but I don't think it has to go to council.
Mm-hmm.
We just we're probably not going to be creating the surveys ourselves. We might direct let's do this survey. So the tool I think would be, we'd want something the staff would be comfortable with.
Right.
And I think if there's the budget, I don't think it has to go to council. So, if the staff said, hey, we recommend, Google, it works well, it's cheap, then okay, great. If they said, we think SurveyMonkey is good, and there's the money for that, and I think I'd be fine either way. So that's kind of what I would do.
Point, because community center, somebody made a decision to use whatever tool they're using, right? Mm-hmm. So, again, to Betsy's point, this wouldn't necessarily be a a town committee decision either. This is really an administrative tool that hopefully we can all use together to clean the information. So I don't know if maybe this is even the correct forum to have this discussion.
Well,
I think it is. I mean, I think as counselors, we can kind of provide like a guidance, at least in my personal opinion, to say, I think you're right. It would be good to standardize on a tool that all the departments used and that, that we used. It would be good to, come up with some standards. These 4 questions, are, pretty much standard, stuff like that. So I think we could help provide a little bit of guidance on it. But, the tool itself, I think should definitely be one that the staff, think will work the best. I don't have a strong opinion. They've all got their pluses and minuses,
Right.
And it's only one aspect. It's the electronic survey that we're talking about.
Correct.
It gets more broad than that, whether we'd want to make phone calls and have people, so that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, I mean, I think, that's why I kind of start off saying I would love to see, I don't want to weigh it down, but over time, some standardization around, what the surveys would look like, so that if I know I'm going to go do a Scarborough micro survey on a topic, this is what I could expect. I'm going to be asked the ones that you said, Ken, like, how long have you lived in town? What part of town do you live in? Stuff like that,
Right.
your age, if you want it. And then I'm going to be asked, some questions about the micro topic.
yeah, I think that the value to this conversation is really, building in some consistency and, a prescribed model for collecting, citizen or resident input on any given subject that's at the council level. So I think it's less important. I think Councilor Gleison's absolutely correct that, having standardization across all departments, but obviously what we're really focused on is, the issue or item of the day or week or year, whatever, at the council level, that this is an electronic vehicle to solicit citizen input on that subject. And so rather than having to recreate the wheel every time, this committee has sort of outlined, these are sort of the demographic information we think is relevant to most subjects. So we like to collect that on an ongoing basis. But here are the specific questions that we would like input from the constituency on. And so I think that's really, as I understand, that's really the value to this conversation, is having that tool at the ready to be deployed when necessary, as determined by council.
Right. So what's an action item out of this then? Because that all sounded good.
Well, I think, again, I think, it seems like my limited experience with these council subcommittees has been that we have a conversation, and then staff tries to distill down that conversation to something to work from for a future discussion. And so I think that, again, let's let Allison and I have some conversations about what we think might be make some sense based on this discussion. And again, certainly conversations are not over, to the degree there are some of that demographic information or some other thoughts we have about what we think will be pretty common anytime we want to deploy it.
Right.
Then let's make sure that that's sort of ready and able to go.
And Ken, it sounds like you did some research already, but I'm happy to research different platforms too and do some pros and cons analysis and check on pricing too and what feasibly would make sense for town. Come up with a couple of recommendations or options.
Does that sound good to you?
And there may not be anything specific, but in terms of standards, it is, and I'm sure Liam, you've read it, and they probably handed it to you as soon as you got there as well. In the new position was the communications document that Larissa, put together, where she was starting to try to, where she did establish standards. So this might be an extension of that. I don't remember a survey. I haven't read it in a while, but I don't remember a survey piece being in that. But it might be something that could be an extension of that document that she started.
You're talking about the public engagement and noticing manual?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do believe so. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it might be time to dust that off, see what it is, and
Well, while we've been meeting, I've shared the collective communications folder with Allison, so she'll have plenty of light reading to undertake.
It's actually a very well written document.
Right.
Oh, right. And that's where Ken and I started. You know, we actually started with that document with Larissa because that was an attempt to say, you know, if there's going to be communication coming out from the town, and this was town focused. So, you know, there's again that line of town and council. But I think from a counselor standpoint, what we're looking for, which is Ken has always said, is vehicles, you know, to get the structure in place of vehicles, and then we can use those vehicles and structures you know, to get communication out in the pipeline. So the council would kind of come along, you know, behind that and say, hey, yeah, we have a survey we want to run. And then, you know, so if Todd has one he wants to run, it's got the same kind of look and feel. And I think what, you know, Larissa, you know, would not have told the council, well, you can't do this kind of communication as counselors because it doesn't have the look and feel. So that document was more towards the town, but I think it's something that could, you know, could apply. I mean, it's a very thorough document. And it's definitely worth, you know, I should reread it. It's worth looking at again.
Yeah. So, and on the side note, Allison, when you get a chance, I'm sure, again, we've got several medium to communicate, you know, between Facebook and the electronic board for whatever reason, but we have a town manager blog, we've got the newsletter, we've got the monthly leader article, we have Facebook, we've got the website, you know, they're all great tools. Matter of fact, Eric Conrad, just in his opinion, thought we had enough tools. We didn't need more tools, but the goal is to try to get them to all work together to be able to message out to the folks, you know, a consistent message, whatever that message may be. So some of those items were, you know, it was back to our charge as a council was try to blow out the e-newsletter because it's 1,800 people, but it's received very well. People that do use it really do like it. So that was one of them. So, you know, just give these things some thought as you acclimate to the very busy town of Scarborough. Okay, let's move to the next item. Councilor Gleisning, if you don't mind, I would like to defer this one until John is around. Do you have any objections?
Yeah, that sounds good. Nope, that's fine.
Okay, do we have to motion that?
I make a motion to table item 6, formalize the standard format for the leader article.
Okay, and I second that for discussion. I'm going to use the discussion point just to inform Allison. Yeah, we've got a segment in the Scarborough Leader. Well, you live in Scarborough. You know the Leader, right?
Yes, I know the Leader. I read it.
Well, I know the Leader too, because at one time in this town, that's where you went to find out what was going on. Okay, but granted, there's a lot of things going on now. So we've got a designated space in the Leader as a public service. Okay, so because it's designated as a public service, there's certain things that probably should not go in there. And we haven't really formalized that or communicated it to the full council. And I really feel I have a guilt feeling on that. But it was a by chance acquisition of that space. I made a phone call, I had a discussion, the editor says, yeah, I'll do that for you, send me something next month. So then all of a sudden, we were doing it. We've only done just three articles. But we're trying to standardize the format. We did come up with a standard disclaimer.
I saw that. Okay.
But the intent of it was not to try to solve the issues. You can't do that with 500 words. It's to try to spark the interest and then drive folks to the web. That's why the web is so very important. And Betsy will tell you that all day long. And I agree with her. That's why it's so important that that the web, we get it up to snuff. And then maybe even allocate a certain area to contain artifacts for that leader, so people don't have to filter through. But anyway, that was just a little bit of a background in the discussion.
And-
So
and
I think we need
I
a
do
vote on
think-
that. I'm
I
sorry?
do think that it's, you know, definitely we need to define it because we might have a little bit of different ideas on
Yes.
it, because it's not the only space that the leader gives us. There is the one that, I believe it's what
Be informed.
fire chief,
Yeah, in the
the
know.
fire chief.
Yeah, in the know.
Yeah, and so that one is frequently given over to the assistant town manager, to do an information piece on, attend this budget meeting. This is coming up. So
Good.
I think, the chief, he'll do something if nothing is on the thing, but I can say, at least since we joined, I think Larissa did the piece at least probably 4 or 5 times. So
Right.
that one seems like it's kind of informational. So I don't know if the one from the council can be a little bit more like the counselor corner, which is something that we have in the e-newsletter, but it's worth the discussion. We don't have to finish the discussion today, but
Right.
I think that we do have more than one vehicle in the leader, and that's important. And it never seemed limited, because when we had our joint communication meetings with the Board of Ed for the budget season, we utilized that column, I believe, twice.
Yeah.
We put together a communication, and then something else went out right before the vote. So the assistant town manager did frequently utilize that, just by touching base with the chief and seeing if he had anything
Right.
going. So that one I see as kind of like the public service one for sure. And this
Yeah.
one I'm not saying is not, but we do have another vehicle in the leader.
Correct. And I only mentioned public services because dealing with the editor, that was insisted upon that it be a public service. Either that or we're going to get charged for it. And that's quite a significant amount of money. So sometimes our e-newsletter, Counselor Corner, that's a free area for a counselor to come in and try to inform, but also express their personal opinion on whatever subject. We go through a minor editing process through Larissa, now through Liam, just because once in a while, it's just a second set of eyes. You can catch a phrase that may be, inflammatory, and that's not what you meant. It's going to be a little different on the Counselor Corner, and that's the discussion we got to have. That's all.
Well, I'd like to say, kudos to you, Ken, for getting it. I thought you did a great job on that. What would be helpful for me personally in this discussion would be, maybe touching base with that editor again and saying, so what would, if you're saying it has to be public service or you're going to charge us, what do you see would be acceptable in that column and what's not acceptable in that column?
Yeah. Good point.
Just so that we understand, what they think it's for, if they, it just would be good to get a little more feedback on that.
Yeah, I will, because
and you could actually, maybe if they're willing, submit some of our counselor corners and say, is it, these are way longer. So that's the other advantage of the counselor corner. They're electronic, so they don't have the word limit on them. So, so Larissa would do like a piece of them as a part of the newsletter, and then you could click a link to do the whole thing. So, if you want to be wordy, you can. If you didn't want to be wordy, so that was, it also made them easier to do because you weren't trying to wordsmith down to 500 words, which gets difficult. So yeah, but that feedback would help me, Ken, when we have that discussion, to understand what exactly they meant, especially given the fact that we also have the in the know.
Yes. So I believe we had a motion and a second. We just got I think formality, we have to vote on that, correct?
Sure. Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Gleisteen,
Please.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Liam. Item number 7. Let me give a little background on this because I know this is just a bullet. In your adventures on the website, which is actually quite broad if you get off the homepage, you can go into departments, committees, and not even mention the school because the school is a separate entity. But there's a lot of activity goes along with some of our boards and our committees that really affect the day-to-day life of our residents, like planning board, zoning boards, appeal boards, okay? If you go to those sites, they're organized quite well, and that's where you find the agenda and the minutes and whatnot. And we've actually made some suggestions for improvements on that, and it's been well received, especially by the planning department. So we really appreciate that. But it gives a list of the committee members, and our committee members are like councilors, they're volunteers, they're not representative, they're appointed by the town council. And at times, people would like to engage directly with the board, and there isn't a way to do that. Give you an example. I tried to get a hold of, it took me about a week to find the email address of the chair of the planning board committee, and I sit on the council, and we appointed them. And it was a past council, but it shouldn't be that difficult. There is a mechanism, like you can go through the planning department that then will disseminate it down to the board level. But I'm a firm believer in efficient communication.
Totally.
Okay? So the idea was a committee level email, generic email, nobody's personal email exposed, and have it associated just with the chair. Okay, so I reached out to the planning board. They thought it was a great idea. So then I reached out to the long range planning committee, and they were receptive to the idea, but they were concerned about what to do with some emails that didn't belong in long range planning, which happens, right? I mean, we on the council get emails sometimes that should go to the Board of Education. And we forward it along and vice versa. But those are just things that, with some guidelines around this, we can, just instruct them to forward it to the liaison associated with the committee. So that's the discussion point. John Clucci, Councilor Clucci, who isn't here today, does believe this is a good idea. He's not here to vote. I was hoping to hear from Councilor Weinstein. You understood what I was saying?
Yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm the same way. I struggle to how you reach out to some of these committees. And I think this is an interesting idea I had not thought of. So, because it becomes being associated, having done this in other forums and with other towns and stuff, it does become, I don't want to say it's a full-time job, because it's not, that's a lie, but it's a challenge to keep the list updated behind the scenes and all that stuff. So, to send it just to the chair, and then, assuming that the chair always keeps the current list of the members, the chair can forward it out. And then if the chair says, oh, actually, this definitely isn't us, the chair could forward it, could reply to the person and say, hey, this is not a long range planning committee, and, I'm going to forward yours over to the chair of the, planning board or something, whatever. So, I think, I would love to see it. And it should be generic. It should be like, it doesn't have to say chair, like planning board at Scarborough, long range, because people really, some people really do want to reach out to these committees, and it's not clear how to do it. And then they don't love having to go through staff all the time for it. So, and I get that people are quote unquote volunteers, but if you're a volunteer, that you're stepping up to have some accountability to the public. So, that's what you sign up for. So, maybe you don't want it published on the website, your personal email address, but to be able to have a more direct line from the community, I think is something you sign up for on these committees.
Right. The way I vision it being, and I'm sure you would agree, right? It would say planning board, on their website, it would say, contact planningboard.com. And behind the scenes, that's when our IT people associate the name to it. And when we change chairs, it would be a task to update that. Yeah,
I totally agree. And that reminds me of one of the things that doesn't seem like it's quite working, which was, and we haven't gone through the email on the website. We had asked to have added that people could subscribe to agendas, and I subscribed to several, and it sometimes I get them hit or miss, so I don't quite understand it, and not all the committees are on there. So one of tools that we thought was really helpful would be to have people to be able to subscribe if they are really interested in planning board stuff, subscribe to the planning board agenda.
Well,
And I
that's a
get them
good.
sometimes, I don't get them all the time. So that's one of those things that we really have only very limited rollout because I'm not sure that it's working. So, but I
Good
did get
point.
some. I was thrilled. I was so happy I got some.
Segue right into Liam, because Liam was asked to get a status on that, if you don't mind, Liam.
Yeah, so where that stands is that a few members of the executive department have been trained. What the solution is called MailerLite. So that's what Councilor Weisstein's referencing, where individuals can sign up for push notifications, and then this it's a very similar product to the product we use for our newsletter. Essentially, it's a nicer, kind of the visual display is a nicer representation, but essentially says, you signed up, you wanted push notifications on planning board. Please note that a new planning board agenda has been posted, and here's a link to it so people can go in and click the link. And my understanding is that the broader staff training has not yet occurred with all the other kind of day-to-day challenges. But again, that's another thing that I think with Allison's addition to the team, she'll play a role in making sure we get that back on track.
Okay.
That'll be another one that, in addition to the newsletter, we'll monitor subscriptions. I think that it's probably something that a lot of these pieces that we're talking about tonight are going to really benefit from some formal rollouts. Again, I think some publicity in the newsletter, on the website, via social media. And again, that's sort of that coordination of all of these things that's really been lacking, which is, stage left Allison. So, I think this has been a really, really productive and comprehensive conversation at committee level for all of these various initiatives that are in kind of flux in various states of completion, to pull them all back together and get them back on the tracks. And so we can add this to the list.
Great.
Yeah, perfect. And I would just say, to do a little testing, we can help maybe in Celeste a little, because it seemed like the ones that were working for me, I don't know if they have to do something every single time, or it's, like a lot of times it was all the way, so that, down the road, hopefully that's something like that.
That's probably part of the training.
Yeah, part of the training. Maybe down the road, something like that could be automated. We talked about that with Larissa, like we do one thing, but so okay, so that might explain the hit or miss nature of it. I didn't know, like, if because if you look at the calendar, the planning board meetings are scheduled out several in advance, so I thought, well, maybe if they're already on the calendar, I don't get them once I subscribe. So Allison, I'm sure we'll be looking into all of that. So I think that's going to be a good initiative, and a great point, Liam, about a formal rollout, because we really, maybe we use one of those leader in the know columns, because everyone I've raised the subscription idea to are like, yes, I'd really like that, I think it also will give us some discipline to say that, we've got to have these agendas, like long range in particular, for whatever reason, their agenda is pretty limited early. It gets posted late, and it's not always clear what's going to be coming up. So, as that grows, that'll probably put a little more town discipline around some of that stuff, because we're like, oh, people are paying attention ahead of time,
Yeah, good points.
So
Great, thanks.
Thanks
for that, Liam.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 8, just a discussion on the metrics and the analytics update. I think you got an email. Thank you for doing that. It wasn't as expected, but that's my bad. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to step back. I know there's certain things out of the analytics we can get. So that's what I want to do on the second pass. I want to come up with, in discussions with Councilor Weisstein and John, maybe pull out certain analytics that we would like to have on a month-to-month basis. Hopefully that doesn't cause work. If it does, you just let us know. We're IT folks. We kind of assume it's a simple task, but could be wrong. So, because maybe we're going to refine the request on the analytics.
Yeah, do you think it would be helpful, Councilor Johnson, to briefly take a look at what was produced today for the council to take a look at and see what metrics are readily available and to respond to them, or do you want to workshop offline?
Yeah, if you want, do you want to share your screen? Can you pull that up and share the screen?
I believe I can. Yep.
Appreciate it.
So this is was provided by our webmaster to go over kind of, these are sort of the basic metrics associated with our town webpage. And so we'll give, page views, obviously unique page views, average time on page. To be fair, I couldn't tell you what the bounce rate is, but certainly does give a breakdown as to where people are spending their time on the webpage. It's interesting that assessing for this period of time, probably unsurprisingly, was really popular. I mean, this is when tax bills are going out. People want to look at their assessments. To just kind of make sure I'm putting markers down for the conversations that or questions that happened offline. I know Councilor Gleistein suggested or requested information about how these metrics stack up against the prior period last year, which again, I don't know how easily that can be retrieved or not, but perhaps that's going to be a standing data point to look at. How are we seeing, if we look at this period of, I think, September 2nd, 2020, or September 2nd, 2019 versus to October 1, 2019, what would we be seeing for page views? I expect as we look at these dips, these are likely weekends. I could be wrong, but we're seeing a lot of traffic during the week, not a lot of traffic on the weekends. But this is kind of the standard report that our webmaster has provided. I expect there's, again, where people are coming from to the degree that that's something that we care about. Again, desktop versus mobile versus tablet. That's some interesting data there. But I think that, again, this is probably an opportunity to engage our webmaster to understand what the data is that the communications committee would like to review on a month-to-month basis, what data is easily retrievable, and then form kind of a standing, I think that Councilor Johnson and I discussed having this be a standing agenda item moving forward, where we're really monitoring to see where that activity is.
Yeah, this looks great to me. I think it's very well put together. I think comparing the year to date, they had done, I didn't think that up on my own, that as we've looked at this informally, because, this was something Councilor Johnson brought up, that we should be looking at this. He brought that up from the beginning, and it was a great idea. They had independently brought us the kind of the comparative time frame. And I just kind of I think it helps us know, like, are we scaring people away, or are people doing it more, so. But other than that, I think there's some really great, it tells us kind of what department is going there. The search terms are very helpful. This would help us figure out what we're going to ask, right? So, did you find what you were looking for if you were looking for voting? I mean,
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that voting is for, so I guess because it's spelled slightly differently with a capital V versus a lowercase v. So I don't know if there's, a way to standardize that. That's not a big deal. But yeah, I think this is a great start. I have to admit, I don't know what bounce back rate is either. So that may be incredibly interesting. That's
I'll tell you what bounce back rate is.
Yes. Can you tell us what bounce rate is, Ken?
Bounce back rate is you came in with a very focused attention and then you left.
So what does the number mean then?
Oh, where is the number? Right there. I do believe out of the whole, instead of coming in and just perusing everywhere, 50% of the people came in and with a specific task, went there and then left.
Yeah,
Didn't peruse around about the beaches, and at the same time they were registering their car. I could be wrong. But
that seems, if I understand it a little better, I think that seems valuable. I mean, because right there you see it was 2.77 pages per session. So I don't know if that's anything we could get from a year ago on the old website. So that might be a whole difference right there, Liam. We might not be able to get that, but they brought analytics from the old website. The old the old website was still Google. They just put kind of a fancier, front on it. So, I mean, it that might be kind of interesting to see, if we can compare it, because, were people just getting frustrated and they went, no, forget it, I'm out? Or, were they just kind of, but I think this is a great start.
Yeah, and again, I just want to apologize. Brian Butler, who's our webmaster, did provide me with definitions for some of these terms, and I believe Ken's correct. It's the
What's
bounce
bounce?
rate is the percentage of single page visits before leaving the page, and the percent exit is the percentage of visits that ended on an individual page. So someone went to as I understand it, someone went to the one page they were looking for and then left. They didn't spend time perusing other areas of the site.
I think so. If you were marketing and using your website to try to get people to stay on your website and find information, you would want a lower bounce rate because you would want them to be staying on the website for as long as possible. I can see, like, from a town perspective, that they're going for certain information and then they retrieve it and then they leave. So that might be a good sign. It's hard to tell. But if you wanted them to stay on the website, then a way to improve that would be to make linkable content from that site. So if they are interested in whatever they're looking on that site, then you click and there's an option to bring them to a page that's similar to learn more information or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. The difference kind of between a marketing aspect of it and
a town. If they got the information they wanted, maybe that's a good thing that bounce rate is that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Sort of, I think that this is perhaps
point.
We should have started the meeting with this data, because I think that does kind of lend some of those questions we've been asking. Is this indicative of the average time page being so low that people are quickly finding what they need and leaving? I also think something we've sort of talked about is what is the website's value in terms of educating people on an awareness level that they may not have been. If people aren't spending on average a minute on the website, they're probably not going there to peruse, a news feed necessarily. Whether we see that change as we maybe realign some of our website features, maybe that will be more of a stopping point for people to understand kind of what's going on in town. Right now, that I would suggest or theorize that people are going there again just for one specific service or piece of information and then leaving. They're not stopping to read the newsletter or.
Well, I think we have a very unique perspective now because, clearly the COVID crisis, drove a lot of this. And, I don't want to sound unfair, but, a lot of people did go to the website to see what was going on with COVID, and we weren't really able to keep it up, so, maybe learning from that, we do want to have a crisis area where if there is a crisis, so we've started some of that hot topics or whatever, but, as we go forward, you might have wanted to see people spending time on your COVID page, because we want people to know what they should be doing, what we were doing, what we knew. And it was a challenge to get all of that information out. And a lot of it got pretty dated, like I kept going to, has it been updated, and sometimes we didn't have news, but, sometimes it got to be a month or two old, and we weren't alone. I went on a lot of other town website COVID pages. So it's not a criticism as much as a learning. Like if we do have a crisis situation again, how do we want to be able to communicate quickly with the, with the community? I'd be really curious to see those individual numbers of people coming to the site, at when COVID, first hit, did people come a lot and, didn't find, not that we're going to be able to interpret it, but did those hits go way up? Did our visits go way up, in March and April?
Well, I certainly can request, perhaps, going on a month by month basis. Again, my sense from Brian wasn't that this was a huge lift. But, maybe we can go back and look at, a prior 12-month period to see how some of these things have changed. I would imagine that, it's interesting that the top 7 search terms for this period were either vehicle registrations or voting in some fashion. I guess hours is
right.
But, it's seeing kind of how those trends developed over this really unique period of time. Might be interesting for the committee to have that information.
I would also like to learn more about when did the new website roll out? Because I'd just be curious to see how this compares, like before and after the website.
August, was it August?
August. Okay, so very.
August 7th.
So one thing that stood out to me, if you scroll down, Liam, is that I just assume, and just from my previous role, that the device type used is way more often mobile. And I was surprised to see that in this case, it's a lot higher for desktop. And I'm wondering, it could be just the demographics of the town, but also it could be that maybe our site's not as mobile friendly as it should be. And if people are trying to use their phone but aren't able to, so then end up using a desktop. That's what I'd be curious. That's an example of something I'd like to compare before and after.
Yeah.
That is a great point, because I had a former counselor on the line one night, and he was looking for something, and I had my laptop up. He had his mobile phone up, and the page was not even refreshing the same for us. He actually had to do a refresh on a mobile to get anything to show up, because there's nothing there. I'm like, well, I'm looking right at it, and I'm like, what are you on? And he's like, I'm on my phone. I'm like, I'm on my laptop, so,
yeah.
So there was a difference there. And then I used to use, it wasn't the best, but again, the calendar is like all the way at the bottom now, which is bad enough when you're on a desktop, but you've got to like keep scrolling on the mobile to get to the calendar. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Like the home page is divided into sections, each with their own scrolling cursor within that section. So if you're like trying to scroll through the calendar versus trying to like scroll up on the page, it's just kind of hard to navigate, even for me on my phone at least.
That would be the other thing I would say about desktop versus mobile. It could be because people are working from home.
That's a good
now
point
they're
too.
at their desktop, and so like,
Yeah.
I'll just jump on there from my desktop. I mean, that's entirely possible, because before, a lot of times you might not use your work computer, to get on a personal search or something.
Right.
And you might use your phone, but yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'd be curious to see if we get a stat on that from the past. But the old website wasn't that mobile friendly either. So yeah. And you can always guess what these things mean, but that's a really good point.
So I hate to rush this committee work, but I do have another committee to staff and moderate in 5 minutes. So I'm not sure if we, certainly it seems like we have quite a lot of work to be done between now and either November 1 or a meeting between those two times.
Yeah, we can wrap this. It just let me see. Are there anybody from the public for a public comment?
We have no one in attendance.
That's not good, but right now it is, okay? So let's feed then into the future agenda items that will roll back to what we discussed and what our action items taken. What should they be?
I think that we need to be prepared to staff need to be prepared to come back to have a plan for some website feedback. Again, I think focus group is what's been suggested as that medium. Again, some perhaps a virtual focus group. I think that we wanted to take the lead on looking at survey options and tools for the town council to use as needed, and maybe some ideas around standardized metrics and demographic information that we find valuable. I think that we need to come back and have another discussion with a full committee on the format for the leader article. We had some discussion there. And then I think the standing agenda item on metrics and analytics. I might suggest that we should have a separate agenda item to talk about push notifications and MailerLite. Look for an update on that initiative. And I think that will be plenty to keep us busy.
Yeah.
I know that, again, we've been, we've put a caveat in for almost every statement that Allison's been on the job now for about 9.5 hours, but allow Allison some time to I've certainly shared out quite a lot of the committee work, historical work. So to go through that, but I think that through these discussions, I think that certainly this committee and the larger council's objective of trying to standardize some of these initiatives and seeing the interconnectivity between them, I think is quite apparent.
Right. And I would just quickly say that was a great summary. And there is a lot of pent-up demand. and we can only have one number one priority. You can say everything's number one, but it ain't true. Stuff gets pushed down and you actually work only on one. If I had to say, from my standpoint, it's the website and the feedback from the website.
Yep.
So that's, just where I'm kind of, that's coming from me. We're not taking a vote on that, but,
I agree.
you can only do one thing at a time. And, there's a lot of pin up demand, and, we're going to get there. It's going to happen now that we have a focus on it. So it's all good. It's all good stuff. That was a great summary, Liam. Thank you. I'll make a motion to adjourn, Ken.
And I second that motion.
Great. Councillor Gleisteen,
Yes.
Councillor
Excited
Johnson.
about that.
Yes, and welcome aboard, Allison.
Thank you so much.
I really,
Yeah.
I feel like there's definitely a common interest to communicate with the town. Not that it was lacking before. It just, I don't think you'll be spread as thin as our prior resource. You'll be able to focus more on the engagement and the communication. So I'm really looking forward to working with you.
I'm very fortunate that this meeting was on my first day because I'm hearing everything and I can get the ball
Good.
rolling. So it actually worked out well.
Good.
Yeah.